and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. The 9th of December is International Anti-Corruption Day. It provides an opportunity for us to recommit to collective action in preventing and addressing corruption. Anwar Ibrahim, who campaigned on a platform of anti-corruption, has, as Prime Minister, announced that his administration will no longer approve procurements without tender. So this non-competitive public procurement method in Malaysia is often referred to direct negotiations. My first guest on the show is the author of the policy paper titled "Improving Direct Negotiation Rules in Malaysia." Sri Murniati Yusof is the Deputy Research Director at the think tank IDEAS Malaysia. She joins me now. Murniati, thank you for being on the show. What did you make of the Prime Minister's announcement to no longer practice direct negotiations in public procurement? Will this move actually help eliminate corruption practices in government procurement?
Well, thank you, Melissa, for having me. I think if the Prime Minister means as a competitive process, as open tender and eliminating direct negotiations, minimizing the use of direct negotiation, I think that's really a good move. However, direct negotiation as a method is still needed, especially in the case of emergency. Say, for example, natural disaster, we still need that procurement method to be used in certain circumstances. But of course, we need to improve the rules, as I stated in the paper, as well as the compliance of the rules. Because it's one thing to have the rules, but it's quite another to whether we comply with that rules or not. So I think the announcement is a good direction, but I think there are nitty-gritty detail that needs to be sorted out. And I believe this is something that we will talk tonight.
Yes, I'm happy to get into the nitty-gritty details with you, Murniati. The last time we spoke, I think we were talking about the LCS project scandal, and in that conversation, you talked about non-competitive procurement methods, direct negotiation. You said there are some exceptions to the rule, security defense being one of the aspects of where direct negotiation is needed. You mentioned urgency and emergency, as well as the need for uniformity or a single expert the cases of a single expert vendor. Can we talk a little bit about the emergency urgency? You pointed to it a bit earlier. When there are cases of urgency of a natural disaster, for instance, and we do need to use the method of direct negotiation, how then do we make sure that that process is accountable, is transparent, and done properly without corruption?
I think there are two things. First, I think we have to have a transparency rules. I think first thing, it's a good thing for the procuring authority to actually announce to the public that we are going to do direct negotiation on this particular, method, on this particular project, and then announce it after who received the award. Then that's the first transparency. Second one, there is a method, international method, recognized as competitive negotiation. It's I think proposed by Astro, which is this UN body. So the competitive negotiation is more or less like direct negotiation, but it involves more than one contractors. Say, for example, in say Tebatan Banjir, I believe there are many companies who can do, all these very emergency like Tebatan Banjir. So we have, say, for example, 5 companies, and we do negotiation with 5 of them instead of one. So that's one of the way that we can reduce the potential of corruption. So I think the current practice, the direct negotiation, only happen with only one single supplier, which of course in some cases may be justified because of expertise. For example, there's nobody else knows about the matter, so there's no choice for us to negotiate with this person. But in the case of natural disaster, for example, when we know there are number of operators who can actually provide the service, then I think it's good to have this competitive negotiation in place. I know it will take some time, and in some cases we really need to do it very soon. So
Right.
maybe 2 to 3, you cannot negotiate with 10 people, but at least more than one
Okay.
or two or three operators.
So not direct negotiation, but competitive negotiation. Moniati, can I ask you, when we talk about cases of urgency or emergency, is it defined what an emergency is? What constitutes urgency that will merit a non-competitive or at least less competitive procurement method?
In the circulars, the definition is very thin. So they have list this condition. There are 5 conditions, I think, as you mentioned earlier, but there's not enough discussions on what constitute emergency, because it
Okay.
can be emergency as natural disaster emergency, or emergency as because this is at the end of the year, and sorry, I haven't been able to spend my money, so this is also emergency.
Mm-hmm.
So the line or the stretch is too wide for emergency. So I think one of the things that we recommend to actually for the government to define very clearly, and they don't have to to do it themselves. There are international rules that can be referred to. For example, the one I mentioned earlier, the Ancestral.
Okay. All right. Okay, that's a good point. I think the definition needs to be very clear. If not, it's all relative how you choose to define it. Let's talk a little bit about the process of open tender. So, if this is what we want to do, we want to be more competitive for in our procurement processes. What then are the gaps in the system? Because again, the tender process can be vulnerable to fraud. It's a very complex and quite hard to detect where the fraud happens. Where do you see in your work, Murniati, there being gaps that need to be plugged?
Okay, I think let me clarify a little bit when we said open tender.
Sure.
I think, of course, I think in a popular term, open tender simply just we want a competitive process, right? We don't want to deal with only one contractor or suppliers. But actually, in procurement term, it's a very specific method for like really open tender for everyone, for every suppliers to submit. It's a good
Oh.
thing because it's competition, but it also have some limitation. For example, because it's open, anyone who, even those who are not qualified or don't have any expertise on the matter, will also submit the bid, and that will slower the process because the procurement entity have to go through everything. We have, say for example, 300 or even 500 submission, and that will take long time. So, and for that reason, uh, in other countries we have, and even in Malaysia it's already practiced. So there are other procurement methods, for example restricted tendering, just limited. Okay, we only want to get the bids from those who are qualified, so there's a limited tendering. There's also 2 stage. Okay, we do open tender first, and then after that we know several people that these are qualified, we do another tender. So there are many other methods that actually can be formalized. I think for now, at the circulars, in the circular, the treasury circulars, at least as what I know, at least for the competitive one, of course, for a small contract, for example, there is a direct purchase or direct appointment. You just appoint someone. But for the competitive one, there are only 2, which is tender and limited tender, which is very, very limited. While we know, for example, Ancestral has 11 types of procurement method, which we can explore, which also provide opportunities for certain circumstances. For example, we know that procurement sometimes quite complex, right? ICT, for example, ICT procurement is complex. My Sejahtera in the case, right? My Sejahtera is quite complicated because first, maybe the government doesn't know what kind of qualification. So you need to have an input from suppliers. And we cannot use open tender for that. We cannot use an open tender method. There are methods to get input first from the suppliers, so we know, okay, then we have this many qualifications. Okay, from here then the government draft the qualification that they want. So these methods that need to be formalized in our system. We know that certain entities use request for proposal, for example. They use
Right.
two-stage tendering, but these methods, they are being used but not formalized in the system. So for me, the IDEAS call for procurement legislation is actually to formalize this. We have those in place already, but we just need to make that available option. For example,
Okay.
okay, just one thing. This is a very important thing. Federal statutory bodies is a very important entities, agencies like FELDA. They are actually, according to circulars, are prevented or banned from using limited tender. They always have to use open tenders. I mean, it's good, but there are certain procurement activities that need other procurement methods. And if they are actually banned of using other methods, it's quite dangerous for me. Then they will go to direct negotiation. Oh, because I'm barred from using open tender, I'm just gonna go to direct negotiation. So I think the government needs to provide this many options for agencies to use
Mm.
slightly less open tender. So other methods still competitive, still will provide competition for suppliers that can be chosen. So right now it's just an open tender or not.
Okay,
So I
that's a
think that's the point.
very interesting point because the more options, the better, so that you kind of fit it into where what circumstances call for. Can I ask you? You mentioned at the start of our conversation, you said so it's not just about getting the institutions, the processes, the infrastructure in place. You also need compliance. So yes, there's good rules, good guidelines, but you need people to comply with them. How do we make sure that we're not just where we fail in the execution of it? Where do we see improvement in that area?
I think compliance. There are several factors that affects compliance. Right. One, of course, it's because you're just basically bad actors, corrupt. That one, there's no way we can do. We just basically have to punish these people. But compliance can also be influenced by expertise, right? You just don't know the rules. We don't know the rules, and can be problematic if, for example, procurement officers, they keep moved around, and as such, there's no expertise retained within the agencies, and these procurement officers are not familiar with the rules. So, as such, there are certain things that compliance of the rules will be quite limited. So I think we need to recognize that. And IDEAS has been talking about that, the importance of retaining the expertise of procurement. People think that procurement is easy, you buy things. It's not like that. Because we need to have expertise. For example, we want to procure health facilities. If we don't know what kind of system out there, if people who have been working on procurement, health procurement, for example, been moved around, it's very difficult for health ministry to actually get a really good deal, because the person who will procure doesn't know. Of course, you don't need to be like a health expert, but you know the matter. You've been handling this particular portfolio.
Thank you so much for speaking with us today. Appreciate your time. Always informative whenever we have a conversation with you on the show. And we're going to take a quick break here on Consider This. That was my conversation with Sri Murniati Yusof, Deputy Research Director at the think tank IDEAS Malaysia. We'll be right back after these messages. Stay tuned. Hi, welcome back to Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris. We're discussing Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim's announcement that his administration will no longer approve procurements without tender. We're discussing this to mark International Anti-Corruption Day on the 9th of December. It's an opportunity for us to address efforts to eliminate or minimize corruption in the country. Joining me now is Datuk Seri Akhbar Satar. He's the president of the Malaysia Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. He's also the former president of Transparency International Malaysia. Datuk Seri, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I want to ask you about your thoughts when you heard Anwar Ibrahim say that now his administration no longer wants to practice public procurements without tender. What was your reaction to that?
So this is a very good move. So I hope the people who are involved in tendering, in the process, and also the approval of the tender should follow all the rules and regulations. And number two, of course, there is a statistic given by the World Bank that at least 20 to 30% of the budget for the public what we call contract are lost because of leakage. And this has been confirmed by our local expert, Tan Sri Akhbar, the former Auditor General. He also stated that at least 30% of the public budget on procurement has been lost because of corruption and leakage. So this is a huge amount of money. And then investigation by the MACC from 2015 to 2018, something like that. Most of the information they investigated are concerned about procurement fraud, and also involve a senior government officer and also unethical politician. So this is very bad for the country because we are losing a lot of money. Then there is also a study to show that if because I gathered this from a senior officer that so normally if you still carry on with your direct nego, so normally the contractor will mark up at least 50%. That means the profit is about 50%, that kind of thing. But if under the open tender, therefore it is only between 15 to 20%. So how much you are losing now? 15 minus 30 or minus 20, right? You are losing about 30% of the budget, which is rakyat's money. So it is very important for us, for Malaysia, to follow, to make sure that all tenders, except all the critical one, right. Something that need for the emergency contract, that one is okay. But if you follow rules and regulations, therefore I think we will save a lot of money.
Okay, so we do know there are some special circumstances under which direct negotiation procurement methods can take place. But when it comes to having more competitive tendering processes, having just that as an option doesn't actually eliminate corruption completely. I mean, corruption can still happen even in a competitive tender process. Is that true? I mean, where are the gaps that you see within the existing system where leakages and corrupt practices can take place?
It's true, Melisa, because open tender also is not 100%, proof, right? So therefore, I think the most important is the handler. Sometimes you import the best system, the best internal control, the best procurement system from Harvard or from Oxford or from UK or from any least corrupted country like Denmark. But if the handler have no integrity, therefore I think it will be a big problem. So therefore it is very important for us also to make sure that those who handle procurement division, finance, are those who have high integrity. So therefore these are very important because if not, I think we'll be losing the same thing, right? Because temptation is there, because when you come to tender in this country, it is involve huge amount of money. So therefore, I think there are some what we call system or ways to overcome this problem, such as you must not allow at least one officer to stay more than 3 years in that position, and number two, make sure that do some what we call integrity screening, and then the most important point here will be the monitoring by the senior officer, correct? But in order to monitor, you yourself have to be whiter than white, correct? Sometimes you are asking your subordinate, your officer, to make sure them not to get involved in corruption, but you yourself are involved. Therefore, I think it will be useless. And don't ever underestimate your officer. They know whether you are clean or not clean.
You point, a couple of times in our conversation, you pointed to the word integrity. That seems to be really important. But when MACC was looking into corrupt practices within public procurement, they revealed that it was contractors and civil servants kind of working together in what they called cartels to embezzle money. This suggests that it's not just one person, that collusion happens with many people at all levels for corrupt practices to happen. So if you talk about integrity of one person, of the senior officer, of the person looking into it, it's not enough to have the integrity of one person in a department. We're talking about many people who collude for corruption to happen, right?
Yeah, it's true. That's why I said before you hire anybody, especially in government department, right, you have to do some screening, right? A thorough screening. But of course, sometimes you get the best person after you screen. But what about when they mix up with all these unethical, officer? They may change. So this is the process of, making sure that they retain the integrity. So this is the role of the bosses, tone at the top, especially, you yourself to show good example. You know what? According to these criminologists, right? One of the theory on fraud will be, including procurement, will be fraud theory. So beside opportunity, because you are in the procurement division, and also pressure, maybe you want to live beyond mean, or you are a gambler. But there is another factor, it is called rationalization, meaning to say that there is an internal dialogue inside you, right? By saying that if your boss get involved in corruption, why can't I? Everybody is doing it. So this is very important. Therefore, I think, and also make sure that the contractor that you give them contract, make sure that they also have their own code of ethics, and make sure that they have performed well, rather than you giving to crony. So the problem in Malaysia, there is one terminology, it is called old boy network. You understand, right? With all, good school, this premier school, you have, normally you go and see the minister, prime minister, they'll give you, because of what? Old boy network. But this is dangerous, because sometimes you are not expert in the railway system. But I give you this kind of award, you the contract is bad, because you are not going to do, but you are going to subcontract to others. So sometimes you will go to 3-4 layers. So the last person, the last contractor who get, he may be the last 4th layer. How much did he get money? Therefore, he may reduce all the quality, all that kind of thing. So this is very important for us to make sure that you give the right contractor, and also make sure that you give to those who are really can do the work,
Right. Are anti-corruption authorities, MACC, are they all aware in the ways, all the different ways in which the system is being gamed, all these loopholes and the intricacies? Because procurement processes can be quite big and complex. So that at every level there's an opportunity, there's a risk for leakages to happen. Are MACC aware of all these different things, and are they doing something about it?
They are expert, They have been established since when? 1960, 1957. They are expert, and they have forensic accountant, they have all kinds of expertise. But the problem with corruption is that because nobody report, it's a win-win situation. You give, you got something. I receive, I got something. So when do you report? You only report when, at the end of the day, you didn't get the contract. Correct? So it is too late. Yeah. So it is very important also the role of the public not to get involved in corruption. So we cannot only blame the government official, some unethical government official, and also unethical politician, but also the public. Because to me, we are facing integrity crisis. Whether you are a minister, whatever it is, you are a government officer, or you are working private sector, or ordinary people, we are facing integrity crisis. You know why? Because we have no choice. But in order to make sure that your business runs, you have to pay, right? You don't pay, that means you end nowhere. So this is a problem. But of course, for the rich people, big company, it's okay. But what about for those kampung people, just want to get a simple license? You have to pay. So we have the problem. It is a systemic corruption in this country. Therefore, I think we have to look in this area, but cooperation from the public and also from government officials, they have to report. Because under Section 25, MACC Act, if you, anyone, right, whether you are a government servant or the public, if you do not report, therefore you can be charged. But the problem is that nobody report, right? Because they receive a lot of money.
You mean if you witness corruption and you don't report, you can be charged? Is that what the act is?
Correct. If somebody come to know about that, we have some evidence on you that you know something, you do not report. So you can be investigated by MACC. So if they get the evidence, they have evidence, they can charge you because of not reporting under Section 25(1), I think. So there is some what called law there, but the problem is that because corruption in this country is very rampant. You name it. To me, because I've been reading a lot, among the three, including the present what do you call that, MCC chief, they confirmed that corruption is serious in this country, very serious. And one of the DG, I mean the it was critical. So therefore, I think if there is no strong political will from Prime Minister, I think we will end nowhere. So it is very important for Prime Minister walk the talk, make sure that you have to curb corruption and make sure that you do not intervene and also disturb the law enforcement agency. And number two, you must also make sure that the separation of power, right, have to be respected. Then I think we're okay. Because you have to remember, even now, a lot of country, they are happy with the new Prime Minister. They know that your aim is to fight corruption, because this is the only Prime Minister during his first speech. He said he want to overcome economic problem and also cost of living. He also did mention about corruption. This is the only one. So I used to say about this because he follow the footstep of the Prime Minister of what do you call Taiwan, and also President of China. That's what they say. So this is good. So I hope he walk the talk, but make sure that we have a free independent MACC, free independent AG. Of course, we have to divide, a lot of
separation of powers.
Separation of power. No, we do not want to have one AG who have prosecution power and also the advisor, because you just imagine if he's in the cabinet, and then sorry to say,
it's a conflict of interest. I understand. Yes.
Correct.
Datuk Seri, thank you so much for speaking with me today. It's been a pleasure. Datuk Seri Akhbar Satar, President of the Malaysia Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, wrapping up this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching, and good night.